Holy, here we go again, Batman.
What's going on, guys? I'm Scott Niswander for NerdSync Productions. This is the NerdSync Podcast, and we're talking about comic book TV shows today. Why is it that we're getting a surge of comic book TV shows lately? From your Constantine and Gotham and Flash and Agent Carter to shows that are out right now like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, Arrow, and of course, The Walking Dead. And of course, spoilers for The Walking Dead. We talk about it for about 10 minutes at the very beginning, so skip to around the 15 minute mark if you want to avoid any spoilers. Not a whole lot. Very minor, nothing that's going to change your life, so if you're not worried about that, go ahead and listen all the way through. And at the end, we do hit some of the cultural aspect of it. Why is it that society today is so ready for comic book-related material and media from their TV shows and movies? Why is it that, for some reason, everyone all at once is saying, yes, more comic book stuff? So we're going to talk about that, and we are joined by Chris, who is in studio with me, and Bryce, who is over Skype. So let's go ahead and give it a listen. I'm going to touch a little bit more about some stuff that I forgot to say on the podcast at the end, so stick around for that. And let's get on with this episode. Well, Hugh Jackman is saying he's really pushing for Wolverine in the Avengers movie.
I say go for it.
Really pushing it. Hugh Jackman has been saying for a long time that he's going to be done playing Wolverine after the next movie, but he's been saying that for years.
X-Men Apocalypse.
So he was like, even before then, he said, all right, Wolverine, the solo Wolverine movie, that's going to be my last movie. And then they're like, no, we need you for Future Past. And they're like, all right, but after that, that's my last movie. That's my Hugh Jackman.
That doesn't sound anything like Hugh Jackman.
Well, he's Australian.
He's Australian, so I need to do an Australian accent. So, but then after that, they're like, oh, no, we need you for Apocalypse. And he's like, all right, well, dude, probably. It got significantly... He talks the way that my voice goes up and down in volume. He starts speaking... He starts very clearly and then gets more mumbled as time goes on. But yeah, they also need him for the Wolverine sequel. But he's been saying like, all right, I'm gonna do one last movie with Wolverine, and that's it. And then they just keep bringing him back, and now he's finally like, you know what? Sorry, you know what? I'm gonna do one more. I'm gonna be an Avenger, and then that's where he's at right now. Thank you. No one's clapping, but I feel like I deserve clapping for that performance.
You sound like more than...
Don't clap near the mic. It makes it really loud.
more than Hugh Jackman. That other Australian actor who's...
Oh, just the one other guy.
Yeah, the one.
I know who you're talking about. All right, let's talk about comic book TV shows. I have a whole list of them, but right off the gate, let's talk about the ones that already are out and we know and love. Starting with, I think the one that goes back the farthest is that's currently on is Walking Dead. So, yes. Bryce.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't even think about that when I was thinking about stuff today. That makes a lot of sense.
You didn't think that the show
that you love... The first one that I started with was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't even think...
Is there because most people associate Marvel and DC with comics.
Yeah.
I will say that The Walking Dead doesn't feel like a comic book thing for me because as we had in a previous discussion some time ago, when Marvel makes their movies, in their shared universe, they all feel very comic booky. Mm-hmm. They don't take themselves too seriously, and we all know that The Walking Dead takes itself very seriously, which is uncomic book like in the traditional sense.
Oh yeah, this was something that I was
comic.
Yeah, this is something that I was going to talk about for The Walking Dead. I totally forgot about this. There is rumor of a Walking Dead spin-off where it takes place with a completely different group in a completely different location, but at the start of the outbreak, which I think that would be much cooler. I've never had this love for Walking Dead. I've always felt like it's good, but it's not great, but it has the potential to be great. But after so many seasons, I just feel like they're never going to get there.
This last season, which this is my deal with The Walking Dead, is I came in during the middle of the second season, and then I ended up going back and watching the first season and everything. And being somebody that didn't read the comics, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. They just drop you right into this world. They start introducing stuff. Nobody really knows what's going on. So you're kind of figuring things out with the characters. But then we've got this last season that just ended. And without giving like too much away, I don't know if it technically we could spoil it now. It's been long enough, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll put a spoiler
It's-
thing at the beginning of this episode.
Everybody dies.
When we got to this season, though, like the mid-season finale of this season, it built up so much and it got so intense, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to love like when this comes back on, it's going to be incredible. But the whole second half of this season has been nothing but filler, and like not even good filler. Like there was a little bit of character development, but not, in my opinion, important character development.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, well, we know that Daryl grew up in the backwoods. Well, we kind of already knew that.
Because we didn't know that already.
I have an issue with that.
You know, living out in the backwoods with moonshine and his dad and stuff.
I don't agree with you guys.
What?
Okay, here's the part where my imagination makes things better than they are in reality. But
Well, you got to judge things off of how they are, not of how you want them to be.
well, I have never seen a show where I deliberately felt like, oh, this is filler. Like, let's take something obvious, for instance. You have shows like Star Trek where every episode is a separate arc. You know,
there's nothing that is a continuous story between, unless it's a
wrapped up.
two-parter of like a season finale.
Yeah, it's wrapped up in 45 minutes. And then you have shows like Breaking Bad where, Scott, you said that you felt like nothing ever happened.
I felt like
in
the
Breaking
majority
Bad.
of that show was filler.
Well, in the way I see it, when I see a show or a movie, something that has multiple arcs, you know, it's a continuing story, I see everything as, I guess, I don't want to try to define it too much because that'll make it not make sense anymore. But I see it as everything is necessary, and this is what happens in the story, not as they put this in here as filler, but this is a part of the story. This really happened, air quotes, you know, in this world. This is what happened, you know, and it's not filler.
Kind of like when I tell stories and Scott gets mad at me because I tell a lot of details.
Yeah.
And he's like, Bryce, stop. And I'm like, but it's important.
I get rightfully mad at you, though, because in real life, when you're telling a story, if you tell me every single detail, I'll think that you're the worst storyteller ever. Hit the points that matter, and then that'll keep me interested. So
and that's why we're having problems with the show.
And that's why, and that is exactly why, because I feel like you got to hit the points that matter. And I understand that they're trying to make it realistic and everything, so they can't just every single episode be crazy and awesome, but should at least be good, right?
Well, it's I don't know. Again, I have to say something that doesn't make any sense to make my point. It's where my imagination, when I walk away from the show, comes into play to take control of the rest of the show, I guess you could say. Because I walk away from the show, I might get up off the couch and go get something to drink, whatever, but I'm still thinking about it, and then the next day at work, I'm thinking about it. You know, and it goes with me after the show is over. So those parts where like we see Daryl in the backwoods, we learn all about his past, that adds something else emotionally for me to the story. So it's not filler. This is just, you know, a part of the story. It goes with me.
Yeah, if it's an episode that's just character development, then that's fine, because only if we need that, though. Like, only if it's something brand new that we didn't know that would help us really relate to this character for them to die and make us feel sad. But I don't feel like I don't know. I felt like there was a lot of stuff that in a lot of TV shows nowadays that could just be cut out.
And I used that episode as an example because a lot of it I felt like was filler. Now, the end of the episode did bring some really good character development. Like, you know, he was saying, okay, you know, I had this drunk, abusive, whatever dad, and I need to just get over this and move on with life. And, you know, Beth was there to help him through that. And that I feel like is important to character development. But like the first half of that episode where they were just sitting there talking, I was like, something happened, please.
Well,
or when they were like
patience?
screaming and no zombies came up.
You know what was
and I was
the
like,
worst one? I know, yeah, that too. But you know, what was the worst one for me was the mid-season premiere episode. That was Carl's episode.
Oh yeah,
and I felt like that was the worst way to start back the season because I do not like Carl. I want him to not be
Carl
a part of anything.
Carl almost got eaten by zombies again, and he found chocolate pudding.
That's all that came of that episode.
Man, you guys are hard to please. You don't, man. This reminds me of my brother, and I know you guys don't know my brother, but my brother is your typical no attention span kind of younger kid. Mm-hmm. And when I hear people say things like that, like nothing happened, or you found chocolate pudding, whatever, it's like, where's your attention span? You know?
Well, what else happened, Chris? Tell me.
Well, I mean, if you were in a zombie apocalypse, I'm pretty sure something similar would happen. You know, it all can't be my foot's being bitten off the whole time.
That's the thing. I don't need to see an episode where Judith learns how to tie her shoes for the first time. I don't need that. I just need an episode to be in some way important. That episode did not feel important.
Well, I mean, it depends on how you define important, though, because the way I saw it, that when that episode happened, that was his first real taste of independence since this whole thing began, because his dad's been writing him hard the whole time, you know, don't leave within 3 feet of me or, you know, you're going to get eaten. So
you saw what happened.
Yeah, and obviously he learned his
so.
lesson. Because here's the thing, though. He walked away from his dad. His dad was dying, quote unquote, and he was like, okay, I need to go do things on my own now. But when he realized how weak he really is, he went back and he was like, oh, crap, I need my dad. You know, and the chocolate pudding was sort of I don't want to get too metaphorical.
Oh, please.
You know? But I lost my train of thought.
The chocolate pudding was chocolate pudding. Let's not sugarcoat it.
I've been criticized for using too many metaphors when I explain things before, so I try to keep things down to earth more.
You use so many metaphors, they're practically meta fives. Jokes. I got them.
But
Thank you. We'll have Bryce edit in a drum kick there, like.
Do I really have to look up a sound file for that?
Yes,
Bryce.
No, that's fine. You don't have to.
These things never cross my mind. Like I can tell you honestly, when I was a lot younger, my grandparents let me do whatever I want. So obviously, I was at Blockbuster every available opportunity, and I watched everything they had, whatever I wanted.
That's what people do, and they have unlimited freedom.
What you do. You can literally do anything. We will let you get away with murder. Yes. What do you want to do? Oh, Blockbuster again? Yeah. All right.
Well, that's my point, though. I watched whatever I wanted to, and these things never crossed my mind. And this is why I'm like a comic book, nerd guy kind of day. Kind of today. Yeah, sorry, I mumbled across my words there. This is why, because I was watching grown up things at a young age, and these thoughts never crossed my mind. Like, oh, this isn't important to the story. We don't need to see this. They could have done that better. I just enjoyed, the story for what it was. And then we have the internet age nowadays, and people are criticizing things in ways I've never even thought of. Like, really? I never considered that. You ruined my life now.
That's a conversation.
Somebody points it out.
That's a conversation all on its own that we could probably squeeze another podcast out of. But the way that the internet can find things that you didn't know was wrong with the things that you love,
right?
And they'll point it out, and you'll be like, "Well, can't unsee."
Like Cinema Sins, that YouTube channel.
Oh gosh, yes.
I have to stop watching his videos because he ruins it.
I did too. It goes back once again, diving into something completely random here, but that goes back to YouTube channels and anything on the internet. A majority of the time is much more successful if it has a positive spin on it, and that's one of those channels that is purposefully being cynical of things and critical of things. But for me, I'm like, I can't watch too much of it. Let's move off of Walking Dead and let's talk about another show that's on TV right now. Bryce, do you watch Arrow at all?
I saw a couple episodes in your room.
Okay, and Chris, you don't?
I started the other day. I watched the first episode.
Okay. So this is just me.
I watched the Flash trailer that you talked about. Arrow and
yay! We're going to be talking about the Flash thing with Ross later. But anyway, I'll say I like Arrow a lot. I didn't like the first season too much because I felt like, I don't know, I felt like the character Oliver was just, he had no purpose in the first season. and he didn't seem to fit in. And then in the second season, they really kicked it off with something better. Although my roommate says that he hates the second season because he doesn't kill nearly as many people as he does in the first season.
It's a legitimate criticism, I guess.
Yeah, there are lots of charts and graphs that'll do the body count from season 1 and season 2, and season 1 has almost infinitely more dead people.
Right.
And to me, that's not a thing where I need people to kill people for them to be cool. So
that's a profound quote right there.
That's what my roommate thinks is nobody is cool unless they kill people, which is also why he doesn't like Batman. Because
I was going to say there again we go back to the Christian movie scale.
Yes,
where anything that doesn't have explosions, like 90% of the movie, is not good enough.
Michael Bay.
And this is Christian, my roommate's name, not Christian.
Yeah, not Christian.
Well, it made sense still, though.
It fits though, kind of. So Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Bryce, you and I watched the first season in its completed. What's the word I'm looking for? In its completeness.
And it's wait, no.
We watched the whole first season. We watched the whole first season.
I had the word. It was right there. I knew the word you were looking for.
Yeah.
In its entirety.
In its entirety. We
There you
watched
go.
the first season in its entirety, and I say that because Chris has given up on it.
No, I didn't give up on it, but I will say this as a criticism. I stopped watching it because there were several shows on at the same time, and I was growing weary of like every night a different show. It was just becoming stressful to me.
Oh, yeah. I never watch anything on TV. I don't even have TV. I just stream everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
From iTunes, right?
Yeah, totally legally from iTunes.
Yeah.
You don't know that. You don't know any better.
Well, I also had Scott's iTunes solution for The Big Bang Theory. But the beginning of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was really, really bad.
I'm not going to disagree.
It was the characters were poorly written, except for Agent Coulson. He's always good, but the characters were poorly written. It was villain of the week kind of stuff. It was so generic.
I liked Fitz and Simmons. I didn't think they were.
They were badly written at first until they explained why they were there and who they were later in the season. Then it was like, oh, they're cool. But at first it was like, oh, we have the stereotypical witty duo that bounce off of each other.
I mean, honestly, I'll say this about anything. And I've said this a million times before, but I don't think I've said it on any sort of recorded thing. So I want this out there on the record. Rarely does a show hit its stride in its first season. I was telling Chris on the internet that I didn't think Star Trek was good until season 3, and I didn't think it was great until season 5.
But it's almost over by then because it only has 7 seasons. And again, that's where my imagination makes things better than they might really be.
Well, I thought I thought in the first
season is rough.
Especially in the first season, it's the same problems with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that you think, where all of the characters I thought were poorly written. The drama and everything was just not good to me. I don't really care about the special effects because they don't really get much better. So I'm just watching it thinking, this is all right. I can handle this.
I will say this though, the one thing that really stood out to me in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that made me turn it off for the rest of the season was Skye.
You told me this,
is
and
a terrible character. I could rant for an hour about all.
I don't agree with you on this because I feel like it's very judgmental.
But her origin doesn't make any sense. It's not Marvel related at all. They just threw in this
None
attractive
of these characters are Marvel related.
They threw in an attractive female lead, and
Coulson wasn't Marvel related until Iron Man.
Yeah, but he's in S.H.I.E.L.D. and that's Marvel related. But I mean, her character is in there in such a generic way. It's like she's an attractive female lead put into this role because she's a hacker. Ooh, she's a hacker, and her dialogue is always bad. And she's clearly there as the love interest, the foil to the other characters.
I can say that I originally agreed with Chris. I was like, okay, they pulled some chicken off the street to go in a high level military, super high clearance area, like nobody's watching her.
I thought
she's just kind of allowed to do whatever she wants.
I thought that made sense.
I thought that made zero sense at first.
Think about it.
Later in the season, Coulson does come out with a better explanation as to why he brought her onto the team. And as Coulson and her kind of like friendship begin to develop, I think it makes a lot more sense. But at first, I definitely did agree with Chris. And I was like, okay, you just pulled in like some chick off the street just because she's no.
Yeah,
that's not okay.
I don't think they brought her in off the streets for no reason. It made sense to me because it's like, all right, you have S.H.I.E.L.D., which is crazy secure, and nobody has been able to hack in ever.
Not anymore.
And then you have the first person who's just essentially a nobody who could hack into S.H.I.E.L.D. That means that they are better than S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. So they hire her on. They don't just take her. They hire her to be trained. They don't just take her off the streets.
I guess that's true. I just feel like they didn't really focus enough attention on, hey, she's actually really good at this, because they talk about her team outside of S.H.I.E.L.D. so much that it's like, oh, there are all these other people that are doing the exact same thing she's doing, and she's not even the leader of that group.
I didn't like the rising tide thing. I thought that was weird.
Dumb. That's so
honestly
dumb.
I think that's why I disliked her character at first so much, was because they made her more about the struggle she was having between whether she should help S.H.I.E.L.D. or help the rising tide, instead of it being, hey, she's really good at what she does. Let's get her on our side.
What's interesting to me about S.H.I.E.L.D. is that they take all the things that you think are very like stereotypical, and they almost kind of very subtly do the opposite. So you don't really expect it a whole bunch. For Skye, right? When they bring her on, it's like, oh man, she's with the rising tide. You know that they're going to do something where they're going to test her loyalty, but then she's going to go end up with S.H.I.E.L.D. But then what happens is she doesn't. And then she kind of sticks with her loyalties with the rising tide. And then that makes S.H.I.E.L.D. put her on a shorter leash and everything. But then, eventually she turns around and comes with S.H.I.E.L.D. And they do something similarly, but I don't want to ruin it for Chris because I really feel like...
I saw that episode. I dropped off mid-season.
Yeah, well... It was after Captain America when things get crazy awesome.
Things start going nuts.
Yeah, I didn't see any.
Well, and the reason for that, is, and I've told you guys this in person, I'm sure, but they knew what they wanted to do with Captain America 2 before S.H.I.E.L.D., and so what they had to do was, like Chris was saying, make these kind of filler episodes until Captain America came out, and then that's when they started to do. Just about every episode was an overarching story for that. Later half of the season, which was, I thought, a really nice way to do it. I thought the whole end of the season was so good. I'm willing to forgive it for...
Yeah, and, you're saying, like, after Captain America is when it really went crazy. Mm-hmm. I think it started to actually pick up, though, about the time they introduced Deathlock.
Yeah.
Like, revealed his character. About then, it was like, whoa, okay, so this guy's here now. There is one thing that bugs me about S.H.I.E.L.D., and it might come back up later, but if you remember way, way back in the episode where Skye is infiltrating that one guy's mansion.
Yeah, Quinn.
Yeah, and the one dude gets sucked into the gravity stuff.
Yeah, the gravitonium.
Yeah, gravitonium, that stuff. We saw that again in one of the later episodes when they were at the freezer.
Yeah, the fridge.
The fridge. Yeah, the fridge. When they were at the fridge, we see that again in a box.
Yeah.
Like we see it there. And I'm like, oh, so they're going to bring this character back out and he's going to be like a main villain or something. No.
Well, because they don't know that he's still alive in there. Nobody knows that they just think it's gravitonium.
But we kind of suspect and may or know.
Well, here's the problem with that is they had so many twists
but why
and
would
crazy
they show it
things.
Again? This is what bugs me. Why would they show it again?
Because that was Quinn's payment for helping the clairvoyant.
It bugs me.
Bryce
it bugs
doesn't
me
understand.
A lot.
Yeah. Quinn. The whole episode is about Quinn getting the gravitonium. The very first time the gravitonium is there, Quinn wants the gravitonium, and so later they bring it back because he gets paid gravitonium like he was agreed. That's the only reason they brought it back. And then of course later they'll be like, oh, also there's a guy inside of here.
On a side note, I actually liked that episode.
The gravitonium one?
Yes, I thought
it was good.
I thought that was a neat episode. I liked the cosmic aspect of it.
I asked you this before and I think the answer was no, but have you seen the one with the alien virus?
I want to say no.
That one was my favorite one.
That was the first really intense episode.
That was when I'm like, all right, guys, everyone who gave up on S.H.I.E.L.D., that's the episode you need to see because it's so good.
Well, the last episode I saw was with the guy that was like phasing in and out of reality to teleport, across that abandoned ship they were chasing him through.
Right.
I think it was a ship. Was it a ship? What was it?
It was something.
Something
Don't remember.
ship-like.
Didn't really care.
That was the last episode I saw, and I was like, oh, that was, that was meh. Whatever.
The first ones are not great, but they get much better after Captain America. And then Hydra. What? Hydra.
Hydra. I know that one of the characters is probably Hydra. Based on the teaser image that I saw on the internet, I was like, oh, that guy's probably Hydra.
Or Girl.
Or Girl. Oh, Rising Tide, Hydra. That makes so much sense.
No, but it's really great. Trip is really freaking awesome. And they use Howling Commando gear.
Really? Howling Commandos?
So cool.
I like the Howling Commandos.
Then you should watch more S.H.I.E.L.D.
I'm waiting for the Blu-ray, though. I promise I'm going to watch all of it when the Blu-ray comes out. Contrary to what I did when I bought the Blu-ray for Game of Thrones, and I hated it, so I haven't watched it again.
Yeah. I have not watched Game of Thrones, but that's something that I plan on watching this
That's
summer.
a side note. I personally told myself I was going to read the books, and I didn't. So then I decided, well, I'll just be a bandwagon jumper and I'll watch the show, and I hated it, so I wasted my money.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the podcast, but real quick, I just wanted to give some thank yous out for the people who helped support the NerdSync Podcast Kickstarter. So for the next couple episodes, I'm going to be giving some personal thank yous to the people who helped make what you're listening to possible. So the first person I want to thank is Sierra Parmley, who I believe I met in real life once. Really cool person, lots of cool cosplay stuff, and if you want to follow her, you can go to taekwondaughter.tumblr.com. That is TeakwonDaughter.tumblr.com. Also a YouTube channel as well, same name, Taekwondaughter. Really cool stuff. I'm on the website right now. It's very well put together. It's got some Ramona Flowers, some Brave cosplay, some Doctor Who stuff as well. Gotta go check it out. So once again, thank you so much to Sierra Parmley, and we're going to be headed right back into the show. Let's jump, because we've been talking for so long, and we've only touched on 3 shows quickly. So let's do some upcoming shows that have been announced. So with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there's also Agent Carter, which is Agent Peggy Carter and the start of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think they have 8 episodes lined up. I don't know how much farther they're going to go with that. If 8 episodes is just the first season, or if it's just a mini series or something. But that sounds really interesting. I would like to see. That also seems like it would have Howling Commando stuff in it.
Yeah, I'm willing to give it a chance. I don't see the point. It seems like they're just kind of trying to keep the Marvel momentum going with it. And I don't see the point of the show, but I'm willing to give it a fair chance because she is an interesting character.
I like the period of what the show is going to be, that kind of World War II era. I like everything from there, so I think it'll be an interesting show. Bryce, do you have any thoughts about it?
I think kind of like what Chris was saying, just keeping the momentum rolling. What I hope is that the reason they're doing this is because they really want to bring people into more of the comic book series, the lesser known stuff. I knew about S.H.I.E.L.D. and I knew about stuff, but I don't read comics a lot. So they're getting in depth into these other characters, I feel like, which is drawing maybe not, big blockbuster movie crowds in, but the more little groups of people that they can get to rally behind their favorite show, then that's going to get more people into it, which of course is going to make them money, so they're happy.
Right.
But at the same time, it does put more money in their pocket to better develop things, and I think that would just be, I don't know, really.
I like what you're saying there, because it's like Marvel is diving into the more lesser known characters,
like Guardians of the Galaxy,
which is the most amazing thing.
I'm so excited for that. I had never heard of Guardians of the Galaxy before, and then Scott told me when they first announced it, and immediately I went to the internet and started looking stuff up. Yep. And now that
so cool.
we have 2 trailers out now, and I'm like, yes, need to see this movie.
It's gonna be so good. But on that front with the lesser known characters, I feel like that's a really good move because with DC you could just ask a random person who doesn't read comic books, like, who are some DC superheroes? And as long as they don't say superheroes that are Marvel superheroes, because some people might say Spider-Man,
Derp.
and yeah, but most of the time they're gonna say Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, basically the main Justice League, but they're not going to jump into characters that are lesser known. But Marvel is kind of trying to shed light on everything all at once. And they're like, hey, take all of our universe and fit it in somewhere in movies and TV shows.
And I kind of like that too, because like you're talking about with like the 8-episode kind of mini-series things, that's going to give you enough to have a backstory and get a good feel for each character that they do these mini-series over, but they're not going to blow it up into a giant movie, because there are some storylines that I feel like they're such small characters, you wouldn't be able to really stick them in a full-length movie.
Right.
And still keep people's attention.
I wonder what villains they're going to do for that time period, though, right?
Probably the Red Skull again. I would venture to guess. Actually, my more appropriate guess would be Nazis.
Nazis, just like regular Nazis. That'd be cool.
Obviously, because the Red Skull was the whole Nazi magic Indiana Jones era kind of thing.
And then you have. So they're just going after other mystical objects.
That would be my guess.
That'd be kind of cool, though. Like almost like a scavenger hunt for mystical objects, trying to keep them away from the Nazis.
It makes sense because
now, this sounds like Assassin's Creed.
Well, it's it's almost on a completely unrelated thread, but like the new Castle Wolfenstein game that just came out. That's also another Nazi magic thing, but that's not a new concept. It's something that's always been a fascinating storyline in just about every medium you put it in, from even Hellboy, which is more Nazi magic stuff.
Now that you mention it, when you spell Nazi backwards, it spells magic. Did anyone notice that?
It does.
No, it doesn't do that?
Scott didn't pass his spelling tests in high school.
I didn't pass anything.
He is subtly mocking us.
Not so subtle. So that looks fun. And also with DC stuff, there's a couple of them, I think. So let's talk about Gotham, which is Batman pre-Batman.
Looks awesome, by the way. The trailer, I was like,
it's so weird that that's the one that you say looks awesome.
No, because
that's the one that everybody's dissing.
That's the one where I'm like, when you say Agent Carter, you're like, I don't really see the point. That's the one. Gotham is the one where I say, I really don't see the point.
But it's a different thing, though, because I catch a lot of crime dramas on TV a lot just because they're always on any given channel. They have some sort of a cop show, some sort of a Sherlock parody. I call it a parody because I don't like them. But Gotham, it's got the perfect setup. It's got a character we know now, Commissioner Gordon. Everybody likes Commissioner Gordon. He doesn't look like Commissioner Gordon, in my opinion.
Doesn't even have a mustache.
But it's set in a world that we know. Everybody likes Batman. And it's got the perfect recipe to be something interesting, except for the fact that there's no Batman, which means they can't show the Joker because that wouldn't make sense and make me mad.
I like the idea of they have Penguin set up. That would be kind of cool. I feel like it's almost going to be. This is what we talked about when it was first announced. It's almost going to seem like a CSI Gotham type show where
that was my quote.
Yeah, that was a quote by Chris. And I think. Go ahead.
That might be what they were going for, though, maybe a little bit, because, those shows do really well. And I love crime dramas, because they're, like we were talking about before, each episode is its own individual arc. Like, you could not have watched any other episode. Maybe you might not get certain references in it, but you're still going to understand that show. Mm-hmm. And so that makes it a really easy, and not to say that DC's trying to cop out and do something really easy. Ha, cop. But anyway,
well, they're the new spaghetti westerns, though. If you think about it, it's the crime dramas are a new trend, and they're the new thing going on. So it makes sense that Gotham would be.
And now it almost seems like there's just so many of these comic book shows coming out that I feel like people are trying to put a spin onto them, where they'll be like, it's a comic book show, but it's also one of those crime dramas, so they have to put a spin on it to try to make it fit in.
So you'll draw in not only the people that would be watching crime dramas anyway, but now you're going to have more fans watching it because they're actually comic book fans that like know these stories.
And maybe DC is going to use that to introduce their minor characters because they can't use these big players like you were saying. They can't use the Joker because that wouldn't make sense. So maybe they'll use some lesser known Batman villains, like they'll have the Rat Catcher or something.
Or they could take it up to the next level and go for Joker pre-story and have that whole he was some comedian before he was the Joker. You know, I forgot what
failed comedian.
Yeah, I forgot which storyline that was in the Batman comics, but yeah, they could even go for something like that and it would still work. But you're right, they can't go for the big players because then it's like, well, Batman, anywhere Batman, you know, because he's not Batman.
I feel there'll be a lot of cameos. I feel you could do like Harleen Quinzel before Harley Quinn.
Right,
that would be neat. Arrow did had Harley Quinn on for like 3 seconds. That was fun, but not really. It was a big waste of time that I got my hopes up for. But it does seem kind of interesting. Also, iZombie. Have you guys heard of that one?
Yes, and
I have heard. Yes.
Not even on my radar.
Really? That one's definitely on my radar.
Another zombie thing? Please.
Do you even know what it's about?
I don't care.
Well, it's super interesting. All right,
Why?
so it's another one of those. It's a crime drama again, but so it's this.
So
it's
jumping
this,
on two bandwagons.
It's
at the
a
same
girl.
time.
Yeah, it's a zombie crime drama. I never realized.
All
that.
aboard the bandwagon.
No, but it's awesome because it's about this girl that works in like a morgue and she eats people's brains, gains their memories, and solves their murders.
Oh,
So
that's kind of trippy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's not just like, hey, here's a zombie apocalypse thing. It's like it's still humanity's going on, and she kind of maintains her humanity by eating people's brains, so people don't really know she's a zombie.
Okay, I will concede on my opinion a little bit that it's just another zombie thing because that actually sounds interesting. My concern would be, now this is going to come out really wrong, just forewarn. The female protagonist thing is a touchy subject with me because I feel like the female protagonists are almost always very generic characters when they're written into TV shows. I mean, because we live in a male-driven society, so it's always about the white males, you know, and typically in comic books and stuff. And the female protagonist is something that I feel can be hard to pull off, and I hope they can buck it that,
usually,
you know.
It usually ends up being over sexualized or you know, just incredibly
they're just not deep characters at all.
Not deep.
I'm looking forward to iZombie. Defenders, the Netflix deal with Marvel.
Oh yeah.
This is not on TV technically, but it's exciting because it's Daredevil and Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Jessica Jones.
I'm excited for this one because I'm always on Netflix.
Did you hear he's playing Luke Cage?
Is it? Hold on. Oh, what's that guy's name? Terry Crews? Is that what it is?
They actually announced that he's playing Luke Cage.
Did they officially announce it, or was he just showing interest?
You know, somebody should probably
perfect.
fact check that right now.
That would be perfect. I'm gonna have a fanboy. You know,
that would be the best.
I'm almost 100% confident that that's what they ended up saying. And the thing was, I heard that the other. This sounds super racist. The other black guy, the other Old Spice,
Old Spice guy who wanted to play Luke. Luke Cage.
He wanted to play. You probably know that story better than I do, Scott.
Oh, all I know about it is he really wanted to play Luke Cage. He made like a fan trailer for it. He went on like the official Marvel YouTube channel and made like a funny video about it. So he was really pushing for playing Luke Cage in a movie, and I guess that they just didn't want him, even though he worked with Marvel on making that Luke Cage video. They were just like, you're not the guy.
Or if they did the other Old Spice black guy, Akimbe Mutombo, the basketball player.
Yeah.
When they did that campaign, I went online and I played that game, Old Spice Saves the World, I think it was called, or Akimbe Mutombo Saves the World. That was one of the best Flash games / games period I've ever played.
Really?
It was so awesome. Huh. He is now officially my favorite basketball player, and I don't even like basketball.
Yeah, I don't even know what sports are.
But that was a great campaign. I just want to shout out to Old Spice. I use it every day.
I don't know any casting choices for the Defenders. Are you looking it up, Bryce?
Apparently
Zac
a lot
Efron.
of people were wrong.
Zac Efron
that
has
it
been
was going
announced,
to be him.
sort of.
As Iron Fist?
He's been announced to be in talks for a role, and everybody is scared that he's going to play Daredevil. But
that would be a terrible choice for me, but
it's
I
the
feel like
latest
there is
rumor.
a role for Zac Efron.
he's not a bad actor.
I like him. Or Zac Efron, as I call him.
Yeah,
like
well,
he's a robot.
I didn't like him in High School Musical, but in his other movies, even though I don't like his whole "I'm hot and I have everything in the world" attitude, he is a really good actor.
But he is hot, and he does have everything in the world.
Isn't he dreamy?
When he had that long hair and he would just flip it, he'd just melt.
According to the internet, and I'm having a lot of trouble with this, fact checking this really quickly in the middle of the podcast, but Tyrese Gibson,
from
cast as Luke
Fast and
Cage.
Furious.
Yeah.
Is that 100% confirmed, or did you just find something that said, "Please let Tyrese Gibson be cast"?
It says
like
it
your
on
fanboy voice.
IMDb.
I'm trying to change it up. It says
So-
IMDb says that.
That's what it says right here.
All right.
Luke Cage
I
TV
can get on board
series
with that.
2015 IMDb.
I can get on board with that. Does it say who the other actors are who are playing the Iron Fist and Daredevil?
See, I don't know. It's so hard to navigate the
IMDb is not a reliable source. I will say.
IMDb people
I will
can
say
edit.
that. Yeah.
So
Okay, well,
Well, I mean, if you do want a reliable source of information, I would say go to comicbookmovie.com. They will always have mostly reliable information. That's
mostly. If you want a reliable source, go to a place with mostly reliable sources.
well, it's more reliable than
IMDb.
well, I mean, I'm just saying if there is a rumor, you'll hear about it, but they'll always say, "Hey, this is a rumor." They won't be like, "OMG, this random guy is cast. Now be happy."
Yeah,
You know,
they always
some
say
other
things
websites.
like, "Take this with a grain of salt,"
"Yeah,
which I do, and I don't know why, but my sodium's really high.
a lot of salt."
Yeah. So that I'm excited about that. I think they said it's like a mini series. It's not an ongoing thing leading up to one big event with the Defenders. I assume, like every other Netflix thing, that it's going to be all available to us all at once. So that'll be fun.
Be neat.
I get to just binge watch that day and not do anything else. There's a couple of the TV shows that I wanted to talk about, but really nothing super big. Other than Constantine, I'll watch that. Just because I like the whole mystical, magical demons and things. So I think that looks good. Does anyone have any opinions about Constantine?
Constantine is not one of those characters that I knew about before the movie with Keanu Reeves. I did love the movie with Keanu Reeves. My only concern is if they neuter it a little bit, if they water it down for TV. Which would be bad because it's like on Netflix, for instance, because it's on Netflix, they can show whatever they want. And believe me, if you've ever seen a show like Orange is the New Blacks,
I haven't seen that.
Excuse me, Orange is the New Black,
Yeah.
which is a Netflix original.
Yeah.
They don't hold anything back. It's completely real world, true to life. And that would be my only concern is if they're going to have Constantine, are they going to water down all the demon stuff and it's not going to be quite as scary? And it's like, this is toddler. It can't be child's play kind of stuff with Constantine, I think.
I have no opinion.
Have you seen the trailer to Constantine? I think I posted it on Facebook.
I think I did, and it was kind of one of those things that I was like, "Oh, that's really cool," but then I moved on to the next thing on the internet and forgot about it until just now.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone else have anything to say? Why do you think all of a sudden comic books are taking over TV? Is there a reason culturally that we're ready for comic book TV shows?
Well, this is like a whole nother podcast, but
Yeah, we could get into some deep social stuff with this.
Well,
I want to.
just recently I saw Blade again on paid cable, and I was like, oh, this is honestly one of the movies that started this whole comic book thing, because little known fact, nowadays Blade is a Marvel character. And obviously Blade is not going to be one of these new Marvel movies because there's vampires and there's bad words and stuff, which is not Marvel's cup of tea right now. Blade is very dark. And I'm like, well, thinking to myself, I'm thinking, well, Blade would be cool, but now we have all these comic book movies where this whole thing sort of started off slow. The momentum with the comic book culture started off slow. Then as it picked up speed, everybody was like, oh, you like this too? It's not uncool anymore. Now nerd culture has become popular culture. It's mainstream now to like a hipster kind of level.
So do you almost feel like they're reaching for the next comic book to turn into a TV show, or do you feel like they
Yes, I feel like they're reaching very hard because we have series like, it's not a comic book, but like Harry Potter is over now. And you have series like that become tent poles. And as soon as something becomes a big tent pole, all of a sudden, when it's over,
everybody else wants to grab onto that audience.
Like the Hunger Games. They want the Hunger Games to be Harry Potter so badly. They want it to be the next Harry Potter so badly. It's so obvious and painful for me because I don't even like the Hunger Games, and I can see that. And they're reaching for things now, not accusing Marvel of anything, but they're reaching for things now like Agent Carter. They want to keep the momentum going. They want to find that next big thing where it's like, buy the new Agent Carter action figure at Walmart. You know,
I feel like a part of what Marvel's strategy is to take people that have been on the big screen and put them on the small screen so that you almost feel like, oh, this is a part of that connected universe. This is a character that I already know and I'm jumping into. So I
actually kind of like that, though.
Yeah, it's not a bad strategy. You have DC, which is kind of weird because they have Gotham and they also have Arrow and Flash. And with Arrow and Flash, they're on the same network, so they get to intertwine with each other.
Right.
But then Gotham is on a completely different network, so it's not allowed to intertwine with that either. So it's almost like separate universes. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't make sense if they intertwined because I don't think those characters would have been born yet, and they definitely wouldn't have had their superpowers anyway.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of making one cohesive universe instead of splitting it up between the movies and the TV shows.
And that's kind of a relatively new concept in cinema and theater, I guess you could say, in modern day entertainment. That's kind of a new concept, I think, because that kind of thing, it wasn't really made important a long time ago, because you have just for instance, because we mentioned westerns earlier, John Wayne. He doesn't play the same character in every movie, but he's in a lot of movies, as that character, and it was kind of a shared universe sort of thing. But now it's in a different way because now we know that there are comic books, people are more informed, and thus people are voicing their wrong opinions on the internet.
They are objectively wrong opinions.
Yeah, and that to me that's a trampoline, I guess you could say, to bounce off all of this culture that turns into our entertainment, and we have the shared universes and stuff. And the companies, the production companies and the studios, they want it to be successful, and it's not always successful, as we've learned.
Like you said, they're kind of like reaching for comic books. You can almost see like the kind of stuff they're trying to do. Like in this age of like high technology and computers and stuff like that, adding a hacker or something like that to the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, that gives it a cool little twist that's kind of relevant to today, especially with all of the like leaks and crazy information breaks that have been going on, which may be a part of the storyline anyway, but at the same time, it ties in so close to with what's going on socially and culturally right now.
That's a really good point.
Draws people to it.
That's a really good point too, because you don't just have this hacker in the show. You have this hacker who is just a regular person, and so I guess maybe on some level, because that feels like the character we're supposed to relate to more than Coulson. We're supposed to relate to Skye, and what I kind of get from that is there's this person who is supposed to be, whether they portray it or not, is supposed to be this kind of nerdy individual because they know a lot about computers and they're just, sitting away in a van hacking stuff and doing stuff for fun on the computers instead of, socially engaging, which is kind of what a lot of nerds do. We're by ourselves on the internet doing whatever it is that we do. And then they kind of go, oh, hey, here's a bigger world. Come be a part of that bigger world. And that's almost like, even today, I'm just like, man, if I could get superpowers, that opens up a whole new world for me. And that's kind of what it almost feels like.
It's kind of a good and a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But our society has become very individualistic. And so by these shows playing on stuff like that, that brings each individual person that watches the show into it in some fashion. They can relate to that somehow. With just, like I said, the way our society has become very individualistic, even to the point of, like adding more female roles and stuff, that more plays on now that we've got the feminist movement and everything going on socially.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, it just, everything that's going on politically and socially right now, you can kind of see little bits and pieces of that playing into all the shows and movies, which this sounds super dumb, but if you go back in time and look at any movie, you're going to see that.
Especially when it comes to like horror movies, often reflect what the people of the time are scared of, and
especially their clothes.
Yeah,
yeah.
Especially their fashion.
Their clothes really reflect the time period in which they were recorded in.
And I'm gonna sound like the racist one this time instead of Scott.
Finally.
My little sisters the other day, and I had this conversation with my dad. My little sisters were watching Dumbo, and there are, at the end of Dumbo, there's the blackbirds, which are very obviously trying to portray black culture.
Yeah.
Well, now a lot of what black culture has become is very, this is my hood, gangster rap, that kind of stuff.
Bryce is speaking from experience.
I've met some people, and I know not everybody's like that, but it is a big movement now. But when you look at the portrayal of the African American culture, then it's totally different. It's like the big guy. I can't think of his name.
Michael Clark Duncan.
That's what I was thinking, but he's dead.
Well, any of those older shows, I guess it was. I don't know. It was just a totally different culture at the time.
Well, it was, and that's a good point, Bryce.
I don't know. I'm totally lost now.
Well,
everything
Fat
except
Albert.
that last part. Oh, Fat Albert.
Fat Albert.
You could have said
him and his crew.
or
cartoon.
Bill Cosby.
You could have said anything that would have helped us.
Okay, yeah, or like Bill Cosby. Like, what happened to that culture? Where did that go? Why are we now in this?
Yeah, why aren't all black people wearing sweaters?
Well, no, I have a response for that, Bryce, and I'm glad that you brought it up because it also comes up in other areas other than movies and TV shows. It comes up in video games nowadays because if you I don't know if you guys are real into the online forums for games, but if you look at what some of the kids are into these days, I mean, think about it. We're like in our 20s.
That made it sound really old.
What are these crazy cats into?
Well, think about it this way. I'm assuming we were all born in the 90s, but there are now kids that are teenagers that were born completely in the year 2000s, not in the 90s. And to me, that makes me feel old. But when you go online and you read what these kids are into, it's different than what we grew up. Mm-hmm. If there's no multiplayer in a game, they're like, what? No multiplayer? That's so lame. Or if it's really story heavy, they're like, what? This is so boring. If there's nobody else to play with, I don't want to play that. You're not online with somebody. It's different in our culture today because people are brought up in a different way. And when it happens to our youth, it infiltrates all of our entertainment. Like Bryce was saying, the black culture, it's what the kids are into. So it infiltrates all of the entertainment, and thus the entertainment shapes to please or what they hope to please.
So I do want to cut it off there. Chris had a really good point at the end about how it seems like media is trying to grab a hold of what the younger generation is into and just push everything that it can out to try and sell more things, because that's a really good demographic to have, is the younger kids that are going to grow up to be people who are older, because that's usually how aging works. And it's kind of a weird thing to me that nerd and geek is kind of this social status symbol for some reason. When I was growing up, I won't lie to you and tell you that I was bullied for being a nerd. I just didn't know that I was one. I guess I would just talk about comic books with my dad a lot, watch Star Wars, all that stuff. I guess it's considered nerdy. That wasn't a thing to me. That wasn't even a word. Those are just things that I liked. And now they have kind of this aura of nerd and geek around them, which is why we try to push the idea that there aren't nerdy things. There are no things that are inherently nerdy. Sci-fi is not nerdy. It's a thing. And, comic books aren't nerdy. They are just things. It's the people who are very passionate about them and like to learn a lot and read about and participate in those things with everything that they have, with all of their heart and soul. Those are nerdy people. But what they're doing aren't nerdy things. It's just considered that way. Being a nerd and being a geek is cool, and people got to just put that on everything that they have. You have to have a laptop that has Iron Man on it, and you have to have a decal with some sort of N7 Mass Effect logo, or you just have to have t-shirts of superhero related things because you need the world to know that you are a nerd. Heck, I'm guilty of it. I'm wearing a Green Lantern t-shirt right now as we're recording, but I don't go out and buy anything unnecessary just for the fact to show people, hey, I have a nerdy interest of reading comic books, so I have to make sure that my shoes have Aquaman on them. No, I just wear shoes. But I do want to know what you guys think as well. Why is it that society is just ready for this surge of comic book TV shows right now in this day and age? Leave some good comments, and I would love to address them on the next episode of the podcast. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and leave us a good review as well. It only takes a couple seconds, but it really helps us out a lot. And if you leave some cool creative ones, I'd love to read them on the show as well. You can also follow NerdSync Productions on Twitter at NerdSync, and on Facebook, you can like us as well. We have a page, and subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, or even if you're not, go do that anyway. And we'll see you guys next week.